Hey, so where are we in Summer Storm? We started the first day, discovered just how painful the tactical system really is. Made a lot of mistakes. Fucked shit up. Probably largely to the Union's disadvantage. That's okay. They got on the map too early. They deserve it. We got a bunch of Union reinforcements coming on the board at this point. There. We got Stuart's cav outflanking the Union cav, but Huey's coming along. He's gonna slam him from behind. There isn't really a slam from behind, but there's definitely a value to outflanking a position, which we saw here. You can cause real problems that way. Second Corps is coming into contact with the Union Third Corps. First Corps came into contact with the Union First Corps. At least McLaw's division did. The rest of it's following up. It's trying to slip around behind them. This is a problematic situation. Still got to get out of here. I don't know how. I don't think I can hold anything like McPherson's or anything like that. I think I just have to fall back to cemetery. Do the best I can. Hope the reinforcements get up there. Maybe try to defend, in the wrong direction more. It's hard to get out of a situation like this because you're getting interfered with by all the zones of influence and everything, so your movement rate is severely slowed by the engaged units, or almost engaged units, right? They don't have to actually be right on you. They just interfere with you by being there. The rest of, all of Third Corps is kind of delaying. Pender and Heath just moved up close enough to get engaged, but Anderson is coming into play as well, and it's going to be brutal next turn. I can guarantee that. Everything in this game is brutal, so onward, I guess. Well, it's Wednesday morning, a little past midnight, well, quite a bit past midnight, but not that much, around 1:30 or so. And as far as I can tell, I kind of have to go shopping today because yesterday was too hot to come up here even. There just was not any option. Tuesday was horrible. Like 98 degrees, and it felt like the East Coast when it gets hot, which is just humid and muggy. But we had a thunder shower, and that cooled things off, and that's why tomorrow is supposed to be chillier. So I didn't know what was going to cause this huge temperature drop for one day. Well, now I know. I'm going to try to get the command phase in before I go back to raid. Probably, playing a little slower now. Just I got to get the shopping and whatever. Yeah, and that means I need to try again to sleep at some point so that, in the morning I can get going. It's funny, when I lived here the first time, back, I don't know, I guess 15 years ago now, more than that, damn. Wait, seriously? Jesus Christ. Anyway, the supermarket that I went to used to be open 24/7, basically. And nothing is anymore here. I don't know what's happening. I think it's part of the overall decline of America, right? It reached a point in the 90s or so where the idea of 24-hour supermarkets was kind of a common thing. And now it's dropped off. And I was shocked when I moved to Phoenix and they didn't have them. But because it's such a bigger city. But actually, just before I left here, a few months before I left, they stopped having a 24-hour supermarket where I used to go shopping. Now, I don't know if the one that I go to now ever was 24/7. It's the same branding, but you know. And it's just so weird because, again, when I got to Phoenix, I saw things like supermarkets that were closed on Christmas, and they are here too now. And it's like, whoa, I don't even remember that from like the 70s and 80s. Damn. All right, anyway, I'm just delaying game. Fucked up when I started rolling for command points. I forgot to check over here. But now I look over here and I see I've got nothing for this 5:30 turn or whatever. Things are starting up again at 7. So it ended up not being that important. I would have been able to catch it when I saw it. I devoted 1 point over to third corps. I'm actually out of range even of first corps. Longstreet's pulled away a little bit for me to get there by roads. Maybe I could have found some route, but this I think is trails. Again, the map is too indistinguishable for me to be certain about what any kind of terrain actually is. You know, pretty or not, and I say not. Donuts don't belong on my map. I say not all that pretty. I know. I mean, some people say most beautiful map ever made, and I'm like, yeah, you know, get rid of the round tops and what is this, Slobber's Knob or something like that. I don't know, but no, Gobbler's Knob. It's not here. It's in Pennsylvania. It's where I don't know what this is. Black Cat Knob. I saw knob. But yeah, where it doesn't have sort of a 1 hex peak followed by where it doesn't have a fucking donut, okay? That's what's wrong. I mean, this is kind of ugly, but not too bad. But these are just hideous. And the fact that the design was, and this is for gameplay reasons, but was to put the graphics so that they align perfectly with the hexes. And but you know, you look at other areas of the map and it is not unattractive, but those are really horrible. Those just and they wouldn't be if it was, you know, like a garish CWB map or something like that. And they wouldn't be if it was the TSS map. It would just not look as bad. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Because in relation, I guess. Anyway. Yeah, so it looks to me like Longstreet outran Lee. And that's actually one of the facets, is that because the Confederates were attacking, and attacking on a broad front, and the Union had kind of interior lines on their defensive position, actually Lee would have a harder time getting orders to people and being able to react quickly. So I'm not really so sure that you actually need to penalize him that much. Add to that the fact that in the historical situation, Stuart wasn't on the board. And so Lee was actually lacking a lot of information that he should have had. And now he's on the board. Now, has that information gotten to Lee? I don't think so, but whatever. It does change some of the nature of the circumstances. I feel like the Confederates should be in a better position command-wise, etc. So I think the reductions, not taking the reductions, which I didn't want to because they're an optional rule that looks really kind of cumbersome. More die rolls on top of die rolls. Basically, each turn you'd have to roll to see what rating Lee and Longstreet each have, and then you roll their command points that they get. And it's just like, fuck. If you want to represent the real situation, make it the core game You know, give them like a chart that incorporates this problem, right? Yeah. Confederates are facing a limitation of points to some extent. Not having the bonus points that they had last turn. First Corps, I gave orders to McLaws and Hood just to have directed orders. This is to get Hood either to swing around behind First Corps or back behind Third Corps. I haven't decided yet. I've issued him orders to get behind somebody. McLaws, I didn't like the results of the intense fighting. I can still fight with direct command, and it's a lot cheaper. I don't get all the bonuses that I get, but I also don't get any fatigue penalty for being there. And here's the thing. Anderson's not in place yet, so I gave Anderson directed orders, but I gave Heath and Pender attack orders and paying. I didn't buy any extra chits. Pickett is on his own in the cup. Over for Ewell, he used up all his points, putting Johnson and Rhodes under attack orders to launch their attacks. Nothing is paid for yet in terms of fatigue because those chits could end up being shifted out of attack. I think they dropped to direct command as opposed to that. And then for Stuart's one of the most interesting. I gave him direct command. He could have launched an attack against Kilpatrick, but I don't think that's all that valuable. I think much more worthwhile than picking on the enemy cav is to try to skirt them and get behind Third Corps and see what I can do back there. And again, Hood might be heading that way because I've already got McLaws behind First Corps. But we'll see where we go. And this is where I don't like the lack of written orders. Like, Lee should be telling Longstreet, move behind enemy positions here, or something along those lines, not, hey, I want you to move behind either the First or Third Corps, see what you think looks better at the time that you make the decision. And that decision is going to be made based on pulsing and stuff like that. So for example, if Wadsworth manages to pull back, if say the entire Union line manages to pull back and out of there, or the entire Third Corps manages to pull back and out of there, the decision will be made by that, right? I'll be able to see where they got to. Now you could make some kind of argument of I could see some of their movements starting in that direction or whatever. It just feels really, really weird as opposed to the commander actually giving real orders or suggestions as they went. So that's the Confederate plan. I did not want to launch an overall attack by Stuart. I just don't feel like attacking these guys in their good terrain is particularly valuable, whereas if I can catch disordered or broken units, wagons, stuff like that, I can cause a lot of damage to the Union Army morale that I will not be able to get with a cav versus cav fight. So that's where I'm seeing with Stuart there. And I can see there isn't a Union infantry force within decent range that can cause me problems. Now I go on to the Union command phase. But I feel like I'm giving you kind of an argument of, what the orders that I'm trying to issue are, and trying to place them in position. Yeah, the Longstreet orders, I can't match them to orders. But everyone else, I feel like I've given them their orders. And Stuart, of course, since he's not like getting anything, see, this is the thing. I don't have to send points to Longstreet for him to follow the orders that he's getting. So a lot of what he's getting may be his own decision making, which would be maybe more on Johnny on the spot than, if Lee said, look, I want you to get behind First Corps. Moving on the union side of things, which is the next task, of course. I want to get back to the weather here. Why? It's getting down, the low today. So the high was like 98 degrees. The low is going to be 54. Okay. So there's like a 44-degree drop in temperature to the overnight. Now, that's actually really common here, which is fucking weird to me. Like, again, I'm used to, in the East Coast or whatever, you didn't see drops like that. If it was 100 degrees, it would get down to like maybe 75 at night. Maybe. But 35, 40-degree drops, they are not that uncommon. It all depends. However high it gets, it seems to always drop down into the mid-50s in the summer. You know, I brought this up when I was in grad school on kind of a field trip type thing or something. I don't remember what the hell the situation was. I don't remember. I remember being on a bus with someone when I brought it up, and I don't know why I would have been on a bus with anyone. But given the circumstances of it, it doesn't make sense to me. But there was another grad student, more local and senior, who was like, not in terms of age, but in terms of, maybe not even a grad student. I think he was, but he was also working at the university as like, you know, a person in the computer infrastructure there. But what he said was, oh, it's chemtrails. It's because there aren't any planes here. It's bullshit, right? I saw the same drops happening in Phoenix, and I lived like right near the airport. It's the humidity. It's the humidity. The humidity traps the heat in and whatnot. And there's basically, it is basically high desert here during the summer, and tropical rainforest during the winter. It's like the climate, it doesn't match either. It's dry as a bone during the summer. So it was nice that we got some rain. For the union, I spent some serious points. 11th course, collecting them up, aren't they? First things first, I spent for 2 actions, 2 directed commands. That's 6 command points on Wadsworth to try to get him the fuck out of there before life gets too ugly. The rest of Wadsworth, or the rest of Doubleday's division, or Reynolds's, depending on how you want to look at it, I just spent to maintain their defensive orders. So I'm going to try to pull back and hold a line, you know, down here. Of course, I might be in trouble, but I get some speed there. I've also set aside so that I have 4 points for an initiative roll. Now, if the Confederates were pushing hard with McLaws, they would have wanted an initiative as well. They may want it with Johnson here. I'll probably spend what I have left, which is 2 points from Lee. But without wing commanders and whatnot, I'm not able to get as good a point total, right? Outside of that, 3rd Corps is now cut off from orders from Reynolds because Johnson moving down here, I think. No, because of McLaws moving across here. So I don't think Reynolds could get orders to him, which means he's on what would be Birney now, his whatever command points he was able to get. Well, I was able to get enough that I could give Humphreys a double direct action. So that's 4, 5, 6 for him. And Birney's own division, which is now under the command of who? Graham. only got a single direct command, mainly because I ran out of points. I couldn't afford another chit. I would have liked to have double moved both of them under direct commands. In the chit cup itself, who's stuck there? Well, the 2 first corps units, and I put Buford and Kilpatrick on defense. Now those were 2-point costs each, and I paid the fatigue points for the units that are multiple moving. So yeah, I want to defend with Buford if I'm going to hold that line, sure. And Kilpatrick, it looks like Stuart's going to come after me. I've got to throwing myself into defense is of value, although it slows down my movement. And it also throws me in the chit cup, which means I can't determine when I get to move. But Caldwell, I hadn't managed to get Hancock close enough to him to have him in command. So I still can't get rid of the R&R. I'll be moving up, and next turn he'll be able to get rid of that R&R. As of right now, he'll be moving probably slower as well. Everything else is pretty much given move orders. So that's where we are. As to the move orders, I don't really have to think about them too much. First of all, they're pulsed how I like them, but I'm looking at maybe 11th Corps trying to cover the left flank of the Union 1st Corps. Maybe be able to pull Buford out once those units get into place. 12th Corps and 5th Corps are kind of intermingled. I've got 5th back here. That's a problem. So I may dispatch 5th also to head up. Maybe 11th will be on the extreme left, and 5th will be basically replacing Buford with that 1st Division that's coming up. While 12th Corps, I want to run up the middle. 6th Corps is kind of dealing with the spaghetti noodles over here, but at least one division is on the map moving. Not quite sure what to do with them. I think they're going to go up the middle too, but they may end up more to the right of 3rd Corps, depending on how things fix, or they might move to Cemetery Hill region and start digging in, because that's where the fight is probably going to end up being. 2nd Corps, who's also on the map, could cut up, or they could head for Cemetery Hill. I don't know which it's going to be. Again, some of their units are caught in the spaghetti lines. Hayes back here, though, is going to be coming on the map pretty soon. So I'm looking at them being kind of the extreme right of the Union line, if there is ever a line, if I don't just get smashed to pieces. All right. Expressing things that way, it helps solidify what I'm planning on doing in my own head to say it out loud, but it also gives you an idea of, what the orders are and how each commander sees the battle, how it's going to unfold. So I think it's a useful aspect of the narrative, really. Well, I failed miserably in my task. Did not get food. I woke up a couple of times at like 10 a.m. and noon. When I could have easily gone, and then it was 5. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, somewhere around 7 p.m., I'm done with raid, with sort of minimal raid, right? It takes 2 hours not to get everything done for a day, to get everything done for a day when everything is on hold until, and in this case it's like 3 or 4 in the morning, when some events start that I want to actually use my energy for. And I slept another couple hours. So I don't know, I've had a lot of sleep. Let's just put it that way. Whatever that means. Got one more day before dancing day that I could actually go shopping. It's going to be hotter again tomorrow. Not quite 90, but still not where today would have been. And we are on the initiative roll. Well, I was going to spend big on both sides, whatever that means, which is 4 for the Union. Those points can be used for some things during the activity phase, but not much. And 2 for the Confederate. So it's a +2. I think it's a +4 to the die roll for the Union. It's really important that they get the initiative. In fact, they probably need more than one of them. Like, they probably need to win the next initiative as well, and they get this one easily, this being the 5:30 a.m. turn. And I gotta decide what is the most important thing to get out first, whether it's Wadsworth or Humphreys. Well, neither was a great result. I took Wadsworth because I don't think Humphreys can even really get out. He can move into a zone of control and then has to stop. So he can basically move 1 hex back is all he can do. Now he kind of needs to do that, but Wadsworth at least wasn't engaged. However, Wadsworth got the lowest possible movement allowance you can get when you're in close range, which means he got half movement, even with the +1 for directed and whatnot, and has pulled back. And I'm realizing, wow, that's not so hot either. Robinson is now being left dangling here, which is not hot, and Wadsworth is not in a particularly good defensible position. Wow, the Union is up Schitt's Creek. And now we roll a regular initiative roll. The Union just wins ties, that's all, which they do not get. So now the Confederates can try to spring their trap, and they've, got a lot of choices. Unfortunately for them, though, only Johnson, they chose not to put McLaws on an attack command. So only Johnson actually has an attack command. Well, Rhodes does as well. But I think I probably want to hit here. And all told, it was a pretty impressive attack. Like, I'm undergoing three counters are being attacked, right? By Johnson here. One was here, one's here, one's here. I did the first one. It took over 5 minutes, okay? This is compared to like all other systems, right? And again, look, the designer had an idea of streamlining the command system, which I believe failed completely, but he doesn't make any bragging about streamlining the tactical combats and whatnot. But he does kind of make a sound like if you were to distinguish, distinguishing between the fire combat and the melee combat at this scale is too much detail, right? Regimental games handle it much, much more simply, but whatever. But again, the games which did do that too much detail still end up a hell of a lot easier to handle. Even a melee under CWB, NBS, whatever, is a lot simpler than this. And I'm kind of getting used to coping with it, but there's just so many things you have to do between calculating the odds, modifiers, like not the odds, calculating the total modifiers, which I still end up fucking up. Like there was a terrain modifier I didn't take into account correctly. There was another one on the other side that I didn't take into account correctly. It was really, I'm still really, really struggling to deal with that side of it. And then once you get the results, all the morale checks you have to make, in this case 2, because there were 2 Union units and they lost the fight, and then dealing with the effects that you have to mark on the divisional and army morale. Army morale only matters if units are actually eliminated, but divisional matters if they flip or are eliminated. It's just, and I'm walking back and forth to mark shit and everything. and having to look up the retreat rules and just all kinds of stuff because extra cohesion hits came from retreat. We had a unit destroyed because it had to retreat from here. Now I've got 2 more of those. These might not take 5 minutes each, but they're not going to be that much better. This last one took under a minute to resolve because the unit didn't break. I didn't have to look up as much, but I still fucked things up, I realize. I left out the two direct support and a contributing fire modifier. That would have been +2 more. Probably would have caused an additional hit to the Union unit, which miraculously remained in place. Oh, I haven't completed yet. I still have to mark off a couple more hits over on the chart over there because they flipped. Forgot about that. But, the system is just so clunky that even when I feel relatively comfortable, I catch mistakes as soon as I'm done with it, but I'm like, there's too many steps to it to go back and fix those mistakes. So I'm just living with whatever the fuck they are. It's not that big a deal in the sense that, hey, the die rolls are so fucking random anyway, that these modifiers aren't that big a deal each individually. +2 would have probably been another cohesion hit, but then I have to go back and redo the morale check and everything. There's lots of die rolls that I don't remember what the numbers were. And can I reverse everything? It seems unfair or unreasonable. Got another one to remember, the points that I gained over here. Yeah, this is the walk I have to make every time I do a combat, maybe twice. The points I gained over here threw Humphreys into a shaken state, which is, again, more modifiers to the morale check. I don't know what else it affects. I know it affects activity rates or something, but it's just there's so many fucking things like tied up in this. It's one thing when you're playing a lifestyle game, as they like to call them, like ASL or SFB, and there's just so many rules, most of which you don't need to use in any given scenario, right? Because most of them are about specialized units and stuff like that. But here there's just so many rules packed into the combat system, alone. It's a combat system that doesn't give you a lot of detail, right? All those rules are packed into the modifiers that go into here or the modifiers that go into the morale table and stuff like that. It's just, it's fucking annoying. And, now another piece of information that I have to keep in my head is that Humphreys is shaken. I could put a shaken marker somewhere. Is that really going to help me? I don't know, Are more likely to just confuse me because those shaken markers are meant to be used to indicate unit shake. The indication of divisional shake is on there. But that's way over there. Am I going to run over there and check every time? No. But I may remember sometime through the course of a combat that now the division's shaken. Right now I know that it is. I may also remember in the midst of an action that it's shaken and that maybe I should look up and see if that affects the action that I'm trying to do. Maybe. Oh shit. This was an artillery unit, not an infantry unit. Didn't realize that. For the counter art, whatever. Yeah, okay. I guess it's somewhat distinguishable, but as somebody put out, all the Union units, it looks like fucking spilled Lucky Charms all over the place. Throw a few X's in, and they all seem the same. It's not really that different, as opposed to like the cannon symbol or whatever. But this is what they were trying to do with the artwork. Didn't get a McGowan artwork. This looks like a pipe, but it's not. This is Clash of Arms. I'm assuming. I'm assuming Barbara did the counter art as well, but not a great distinguishment. What do I do about it? I don't know. I think, again, I stick with my mistakes as I go. That's a big deal, because instead of an 8 strength, this had a 16, but that's probably just another point or two. I don't fucking know. I also have to keep an eye out whenever I roll, if there are artillery involved, for doubles, right? Another thing just to keep on your mind. There's nothing to remind you of that, whatever. It's one that I kind of remember. I haven't rolled it yet that I noticed. What really caused me to notice was when I saw that 7 morale about to make a morale check. I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty fucking good unit. Because there aren't a lot of infantry, if any. Wadsworth back here, I don't know. It's hard to tell because everything's chewed up. But yeah, 5s and 6s seem to be on the good end. I don't know though. You know, Walker here has 7. That's Walker's Stonewall, isn't he? I think that's Stonewall Brigade. Even says Stonewall on it. Across the top. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why that's 7. That's a truly elite unit. Yeah. I feel like after having tried to extricate Wadsworth and that not working very well, and launch this attack, and the disappointments in my capability to cope with the combat system, I need to break. So I've done 2 divisions. I'm hoping to be able to get through the rest of the turn. Like, what it's coming down to is 1-hour turns. You know, they probably take about 3 hours each, right? At this point. The fighting hasn't really started. This is the point in, you know, TSS where turns are probably, in terms of the level of engagement, turns are probably taking about as much time as the real time involved at this point in the game. And eventually they go up to those 20-minute turns, take an hour each. Here we're at that 3 times multiplier already. If we ever get to the point that, you know, in TSS, where the full engagement is kind of happening, or at least across most of the battlefield, turns here will probably take something like, I don't know, 9 hours, you know? I have no idea. Which obviously, like, you know, it'll take me a week to get through a turn. Before, I was kind of okay, because at my level of play right now, you know, I could get through the 1-hour turn in a day pretty easily. At this point, the 3-hour turns are, and sometimes get through a couple of them. At this point, the 3-hour turns, it's kind of getting to, you know, it might take me 2-3 days to get through a turn. You know, it's going to take me forever to play the whole thing. I don't expect to get through this whole thing unless, like, my efficiency and capabilities increase greatly, but I want to see how far I can get with, you know, in terms of starting to feel at least comfortable with the system. And then I make another judgment. Without the need to play Raid right now, without the, I mean, I could conceivably do so, right? I could start blowing into energy reserves that I save up, but without the need to play Raid right now, with strong disincentive from it. Quite often what I would do is I'll be doing videos and fucking around with other stuff on the computer. I got nothing that definitely hits me. I've gotten enough sleep. I could read. But basically I'm in the kind of energized and kind of bored, and if it was daytime, nice weather, whatever, certainly I'd go shopping, but I might just go for a walk or something like that. Something I don't do very much. Or more likely right now, because I've gotten so lazy, sit out on the porch and have a drink. But I'm feeling forced to play because I'm just too bored and can't find anything. And the idea of sitting down, like I'm too nervous energy, can't even get words out right, to just sort of lie down and read without alcohol. So I'm taking another action. Confederates get the initiative again. We're going to launch the Rhodes attack. I'm going to take a lot of chance on luck like I did last time. I'm more concentrated. It's still hard. It's hard to hit a line like this. Now, I got pretty decent results out of it last time, but I've pulled away and consolidated forces so that I'm hitting less units and concentrating over here to crack the flank that Johnson's on more. We shall see how it works. And Rhodes's attack was of mixed effectiveness. We gained some ground over here, but even improving our odds, I started noticing things that I haven't really been taking into account. And again, you have to paw through all the stacks in an area, basically, because there's contributing supporting fire from the artillery back here and everything. It's just so much more complicated to roll a single hex combat with all the modifiers of everything that's around it than the idea of, like, yeah, just plunk off the fire combat. But I'll say this. I think that this actually gets a more accurate representation of the combination of effects in a fight than what you get out of the games that directly represent fire combat along with melee and all that. I'm not sure. Like, those games have this sort of pulsing, and they're giving you this unrealistic sort of narrative as to the time sequence of what's happening. You know, all the units fire, and then they charge up and actually engage in melee, when really there's sort of more of a chaos going on. So, to some extent, I see arguments against that sort of split the information and put it in a very a rigid time framework. But this isn't playable, man. Not for me. I don't know. And here we see some of the beauty of chip pulling. Wadsworth pulls back here. I use his directed action, I think. He said double directed action to take up a position up here. But Robinson is left dangling. Now, the reality is, except for in some special circumstances, which the game actually takes into account, such as a road column being able to move one after the other, just continuing on, it would be really hard to prevent such a gap from opening briefly when two units split, like when a unit splits from the line. These are meant to come back. In your normal I go, you go type situation, like CWB, like TSS, you don't have that gap open. You constantly have a perfect line. And now, I would argue you also end up with those kind of gaps with an individual division moving, but unless you're going to have chip pull on a per piece basis, you're not going to see something of that nature or whatever. So it does provide with an opportunity. Now, the Union has to figure out a way to get Robinson back and pull him across. And somewhere or another, I have Robinson's supply wagon, which we're sitting on top of. That gives us the bonus of being in defend order, well, if we get attacked there or whatever. Confederates get the next activation, and they fall on Robinson from behind, which doesn't actually matter, but it will matter when Pender comes up, because those units will all be surrounded and flooded. It's the same thing. It depends on whether you're attacking or defending. They're defined differently, but essentially it's surrounded by enemy zones of control. And what would seem like a devastating effect, right? Attacking the enemy from the rear, well, except there's no facing this, right? Is not that big a hit. It was sort of a mixed situation. I'm going to say both sides took kind of a beating. McLaws would have been in a lot better shape if they were under attack orders. Although they would have taken more cohesion hits from that, which is cool. I mean, again, there's a lot this system does that I completely agree with in terms of the historical or the realistic side of things. But I have a problem with in terms of the playability side. The thing is, it's an hour-long turn. These guys have time to turn and face the main of their force there. We had some supporting artillery coming from over here on defense, which isn't always the case. And yeah, I mean, we're slamming. I don't know. You know, the odds tables are coming out about even. The terrain is against the Confederates, etc. But they have more supporting fire. One thing they're doing, though, is they've got their own rear, their own artillery echelon back here, which, of course, can just whip around and fire. But because, again, no facing, is threatened by Wadsworth in this position. I got to get Hood up here, and now I know which way Hood is going. Right? He's going to pile on in that direction. Just the way things have developed, yeah, it's clear. And again, the man on the spot's doing it, doing the decision. I got a break here. It feels like I'm putting a lot of work in, which is one of the reasons why I come back for, you know, each little division's action to explain maybe a couple of snippets. Like I come in and show you where they're, you know, how their attack is set up, and then what the effects are. Not much happened here. Only one Union unit was retreated. No Confederates were. They did lose some of the conflicts, at least one of them. Could have only been one because, yeah, they might have lost this one. I don't know. Anyway, caught something I fucked up. Anderson back here went inactive. Unfortunately, I gave him a command point for direct command. I couldn't have done that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw him in the cup. That's fine. But I'm going to pay one more, because that point plus another point could have removed that inactive. I just didn't, I didn't catch it because I was looking, I was paying attention to the command chits, and again, you got to pay attention to everything. So many things in this game at one time. You know, and to some extent, this reminds me of the Banish All Their Fears. You got to be paying attention to the command tracks and you know who's ordered where, and also the board position. That game was a lot easier to deal with this. Here, it's just it was an unlikely situation, which is that Anderson would be inactive, which caused me to make that little problem. Anyway, it's fixed. That definitely means, though, that Anderson is going to be a lot less likely to be able to push forward and maybe hit here. What I think I'd like to do, I forgot about him entirely, honestly. I think what I'd like to do is have him hit Robinson here and have Pender concentrate more on whoever took over Doubleday's there, Rowley. For that division. But it looks to me like First Corps is going to dissolve. Okay, so got a couple more activations. Hood shifting over. He only had half movement, so he's not really able to cover McLaws the way I'd hoped to. I'd hoped to be up around here, and instead I'm kind of spread out. And then I chose to do Pender for the attack. Now, I was planning on hitting over here, but there's a deformation or a curve in the Union line that makes it advantageous to hit those 4 units. And that's still plenty of room. There's still plenty of frontage for Anderson to come up. It might be a steeper hill over here. Again, I can't tell. You know, this looks steep. Is this? I don't know. It's a different color than this. This attack currently is not going too well. We lost this battle by a little bit. This one ends up a tie, but for the first time, I rolled doubles. Well, it was on the Confederates, it wouldn't matter anyway. I thought it was on the Union, who have a defending artillery, but because it's grape shot, you don't actually have to check the because it's direct fire. You don't have to actually check the fire, the ammo depletion thing. So I didn't get that far. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's like just things you got to keep your eye out for. You know, squad leader had that kind of thing where if you rolled doubles, I think you had a sniper chance or something like that. I don't know what it was. There was something. Maybe it was double sixes or something like that on any roll, you know. But here it's not any roll. You have to have artillery under the right circumstances for it to be something you have to check, and then you check each unit individually, and it might lose some cohesion. And the other side of things worked a little bit better. Strangely enough, after I started realizing, wait a minute, Robinson's got defensive orders, and I applied them to a unit that probably shouldn't have gotten them, which was an artillery that was sitting alone that had actually come from over here, but whatever, because I hadn't been applying them here. But we punched forward through these couple of hexes, one of them being an enfilade situation, actually, and destroyed two of their artillery, pushed another unit back. We got a gap here in the line as First Corps continues to be destroyed. That ended up generating some hits against Robinson. Should have only been one, I gave him two. But also 8 more morale points. We can see the Union morale is just decreasing rapidly. I'm going to have to start throwing random units into reserve orders, because for whatever reason, you know, somebody off there who's in reserve, meaning like the effect of reserve is that you can commit your forces to aid other forces directly that are in combat, right? That is like the order on a tactical level does that. It is really a tactical reserve that allows you to throw additional troops into a fight to replace a worn out division or whatever. But unlike rest and relaxation or whatever, it actually helps with improving your army morale to have units in that, even if they can't actually support anything, even if they have no actual effect. I throw my hands up about that again. I'm fatigued after having done another combat, or series of combats. It is really a tedious and painful process, and one which is, at least for me, fraught with mistakes. So I'm gonna go down, see if there's anything I can fucking do in raid. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing a blowout develop here. We really are. It's not absolutely guaranteed. Remember, on the first day, the Union 1st and 11th Corps were pretty badly mauled. But this looks far worse. I've been unable to create a defensive line that couldn't be outflanked. And part of that is there's just too many damn Confederates on the map at this point. And the Confederates still have 100 victory points that they would not have had they played the historical scenario and gotten, you know, the effects of the full delay, which would have been, you know, at least 200 points under the operational game. Make the operational game work, victory point wise. The Confederates should collect the victory points the same as they do here, maybe, but subtract the amount that they historically would have gotten. And that means you could stay paralyzed for longer and still, like if you don't enter the map for 2 days instead of 1, you're still gonna have such an overwhelming victory point edge. So like maybe limit it to being able to dissolve the points that they historically got rid of. And then there would be a big question of, hey, would you want to come onto the map 100 points down instead of 100 points up? Right? And then you would have to attack if you did. You would be forced to make up the ground. So it's as if there's something just missing from the from the rules on the operational victory points. Maybe there's something different in the operational game that I'm not aware of. I'm going to peek. Nothing like that, but there is, I found the designer's notes on his choices on the victory conditions. Now, this may not cover the operational. There. I wanted to make victory conditions reflect what was really important to Lee and Meade. Which set of circumstances will force them to the possibility to give up on possibility of victory and fall back on their respective lines of communication? Well, they had better protect those lines of communication if they want to have a way to fall back, and you didn't cover that at all. One thing I didn't want to do was fall into the trap of predetermined victory point hexes. Makes perfectly fine. In some restoring, such victory point hexes are generated by the situation where each side chooses to defend. That is a cumbersome and painful mechanism. And it also is meaningless when it doesn't take into account why they're defending it. If there's no reason for them to defend the roads or to position themselves in a way that they have some kind of line of communication back to fall back on, i.e. keep their army alive, it really is kind of senseless. Like, you know, if the Confederates decide to defend here, that's not helping them, right? The idea of withdrawing from that would make perfect sense, especially if you're under pressure, but even if you're not. But basically, it's also the system for the victory points for those is kind of confusing. It's not absolutely certain when you lose the victory points for them. Like, you know, if I'm defending a line and I leave that line, what level of pressure is necessary for it to generate victory points, right? And that's not specified. So like me leaving a defensive line under no pressure whatsoever, one interpretation could be that costs victory points. Destruction of units is the surest route to victory, forcing the enemy off defensible ground, lowers the confidence. The morale effects of ammo depletion for the Confederates is their very limited supply of long-range ammunition, along with the decimation of picket, his last unbloodied reserve, the expenditure of virtually all that long-range ammo on July 3rd pretty much forced Lee to give up on the Great Invasion and start on the long road south. Now, unless that threw him into, you know, the army breaking, essentially, unless those points threw him into that, it has no such effect. He still has however much ammunition. Like, he has whatever ammunition he needs, right? There's no absolute limit. So if you take penalties, you get points taken off you for losing ammunition supply as the Confederates. But for taking cohesion hits due to ammunition failures. But that doesn't translate into some sort of, hey, you don't have enough ammunition. Like if you're doing well, it's just a factor in there. It's not a, gosh, I couldn't afford to fight another battle, or I need to fall back on my communication lines and make sure I can get artillery ammo up, or anything like that. None of that's in there. It's just sort of this general pool of points where, yeah, I don't know. But let's take a look at the victory points here. This is the victory itself. What we're really worried about is the army morale points here. And here the only mention of the defensible terrain comes here. Defensible terrain is defined as any hex which gives a ground combat modifier to the defender vis-a-vis the nearest enemy unit exerting a ZOC enemy ZOI on the space occupied by the defender. So I think they have to at least be exerting a ZOI. Defend orders increases the hex value by 1. I was not forced out of any situation where there was a defensive terrain bonus applied to the attack. And that's kind of the thing. I'm like, yeah, defensive modifiers are variable, right? Like they say vis-a-vis the closest enemy unit, but there could be two that are range 1. One of them attacked me, one of them didn't. Do I lose the defensive modifier for the one that didn't attack me if the reason it didn't attack me was it was busy attacking something else? You know, however, if the defend order unit voluntarily withdraws from the hex during its movement phase, the cost in ADPs is reduced by 1 rather than being increased. Controlled fighting withdrawal. So that's an indication that, yeah, I pay whether or not it's through combat, which then I guess means it's whatever the better defensive modifier is. I don't know. Even if it's unused in the attack, and it's such a muddled mess. Yes, if it was the only muddled mess in the game, and if the game was reasonably fun and easy to play otherwise, yeah, I'd work through it and it's no big deal. But as it stands, man, it's just so fucking annoying. Anyway, we're going to go see if we can find something to occupy ourselves for a little while. And, you know, I just keep coming back up. And this is kind of how Vietnam was when I first started it. And then I got to the, I'm coming up and I'm moving a piece once or twice a day, and that's it. And I'm really afraid that's where this is going to end up if I allow it to. So, you know, if I can't kind of get through a turn a day on average, I got a problem. Although Raid had some new stuff coming up, then they went for server maintenance right after it showed up. So this is what they always do. They tell you, oh, you got like an hour till this. And then you log in at that time and you get to see it for a moment, and then boom, you got to log off. I wish they told us when the server maintenances were going to happen, although it's always exactly when you don't want them to happen. So, you know, right after something new shows up, they do it. Anyhow, I got a few activities. Let's see. Trying to think what I did. I think all 3 of them were with Third Corps. 2 for Humphreys to get him back to here. Then I got Bernie back here. I've got him out of these swamp hexes. Those are not places where you want to be, either on defense or offense. I've got kind of a deformation in my line. This was the guy who was way out here. He couldn't really get any further than he did. And I would have to be defending in the swamp to have a contiguous line without him stuck out in the middle of nowhere. Keith gets the next activation. Again, he's on attack orders. And he goes for an outflank. It doesn't go tremendously well, given the numerical advantages I have. But still, you know, I don't think Buford can hold this position very well. What's going to be kind of interesting is when these defend order chits come up, those guys are going to be able to force the attacking units to hit them again. I don't know if that's good or not. In fact, they must, or else they have to give up ground. And giving up ground, of course, causes Army morale losses. Boy, okay, first of all, I just drew a Robinson chip. He's over here and in a horrible position. But before I did that, I had a few chits pulled for both Union and Confederate. Pickett moved up into on his little way. Caldwell moving over there. I had Doubleday, who, is this Robinson or Doubleday? Fuck. I may have forced some attacks here. Yeah, these are actually Doubleday. I would have forced attacks on these, which I have to take care of before I go to Robinson. Fuck. I thought Doubleday was here and Robinson was over here, and I'm like, oh, we're safe. Nah, Doubleday's under attack, so I gotta force the Confederates to hit me again there, and I may want to shift some units out of the way, thereby costing myself some Army morale. But Robinson's just going to be a nightmare. I don't know what to do with him. He wants to fall back this way, connect up with this line, but he can't. McLaws has moved into place in a problematic situation. I could advance against the Confederates. I don't know what that would do. Or I could try to squeeze one hex. You can basically do that, but that would force all kinds of attacks, some of them surrounded. I could try to squeeze out this way, but then Hood and eventually Pickett, but Hood is in a position to catch me against McLaws. I think Robinson is just so fucked. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like I had something else that I pulled, but I don't know what it is. Keep avoiding moving Stewart because I don't want to reveal what I'm going to do with him. Although with Caldwell coming up, maybe what I want to do with him is changing. But I really want to slip him behind third corps, and he might have the movement to do that. And there were other situations. Yeah, so like when Doubleday came up, I would have wanted to withdraw Doubleday, I think, except I needed Robinson to go first, but now I see Robinson is fucked. So I'm going to rewind back to Doubleday and try to figure out what he's actually doing. Doubleday, or Rowley if you'd rather, held position, forcing attacks. This was not a bad attack for Pender, and he got an okay result from it. These guys stood because I couldn't afford to let these guys be surrounded. So then the attack here, well, that was a really, really bad attack, but one which the Confederates totally outrolled the Union with a 19 to a 14. The modifiers aren't enough to make up for that, and I ended up getting like 3 hits to 1, but the morale checks held. That puts me to Robinson. I think the easiest thing is just to slip forward a hex and try to keep my unit close together and see if I can extricate out of there. Any kind of movement this way, I'm just asking for shit. Any kind of movement this way, same thing. And I can't stay where I am, right? But it does mean that I'm going to be surrounded by these units. There's going to be contributing fire coming from here and whatnot. It's a mess. I can't extricate myself that way. I have artillery with my stuff. Which means, and I don't know if I cheated elsewhere pulling artillery out of a hex, but yeah, artillery can't enter a zone of control. So there's no way to get them the fuck out of danger. Shit. I mean, they can retreat through it. So this is what I settled on, to not leave one artillery behind. I am using the artillery to help my units shift over, and then this one pulled back. Otherwise it would be stuck up here. I may have just given up some defensible terrain. I don't think so, because I don't know, there's like some kind of hill between there. In fact, I think I gave up 2 hexes of 2-point terrain each, so that's 4 army morale I just lost for doing this shift. You know, I mean, I should lose for this entire thing, but it's just such a record-keeping nightmare. I might be able to force some kind of like leader loss check on Hill and what is this, Pender here or something? No, nah, he's got an artillery unit he's stacked with, so yeah, I can't actually hit him. It's fucking horrendous. On top of it all, the glossy counters, when you start stacking this many glossy counters, I mean, when you start stacking any number of counters, but glossy ones slip more easily. Clipping the corners didn't help with that. And I had a couple of mishaps in the way there. Some of that Robinson movement actually worked. This guy caught on the end here. None of it got badly mauled. And the guy caught on the end managed to actually have an advantage in the combat. Because one of the problems is some of the Confederate units are shaken. Some of the Union units are shaken too. But on defense, shaken doesn't do anything. On attack, it halves you. The artillery support that the Confederates had set up is no longer applicable. because it's already fired. So all the advantages I had to the attack are gone for the most part, so except for here being surrounded and whatnot. But I managed to push my way, or to push some units out, to actually get some hits on McLaws. He took a couple of morale hits on his division because a couple of units got flipped over, which I think is permanent. So yeah, and I'm fatigued again. But we're trying to fight our way through. And again, there's things I have to say that I do like about this system in terms of like, look, it is showing some stuff that I think other games have a hard time showing. But the cost and the things that it's not showing that I do rather enjoy seeing, even if they're kind of a lie, hurt me. It hurt me, man. And then, yeah, I mean, there's a cost in terms of how cumbersome the system is, how many, you've got to keep track of casualties on each unit with a casualty marker. Is that so different? Not from TSS. It's different from CWB, but there you're tracking it on paper, much as you're tracking the divisional morale on paper here. The divisional morale requires a lot less paper usage, like a lot less times that you have to actually mark damage, but that means that it's rarer and you're more likely to forget what things cause the hits and whatnot. So it's like there's a mixed bag in that. But this kind of oozing my way through, trying to escape, that is an intriguing situation. I don't know if I gave the surrounded benefit for the attack on this unit. I know I gave it on this one. I think I may have forgotten on that one. Who knows? You know, again, the dice have so much of an effect that, yeah, the modifiers are important. There's no question. You want to have them stacked in your way. You want to have them heavily stacked in your way because the dice can turn around if you've got like a minor advantage or whatever on the die roll. And if they're heavily stacked, you've got a chance at getting a really big swing, you know, like 4 hits on the enemy, which almost flips them or whatever. All right. So I found something wrong in RAID because they threw it back into maintenance mode again without an update. But there's another one coming, and it's just, wow. All right. Let's see. Let's try to get a couple activations in. This one's going to be a Confederate choice. I don't know what to do. So the first was a pick, I think, went to Anderson, who's pushing his way. He's straggling all over the place. And then the Union got a pick. They took the defensive chit for Buford, who forced Heath to attack. That did not go that terribly for Heath, to tell you the truth. He has some good odds, but the improved forces kept it as a stalemate. But there's a gap open now, which is, of course, the problem. Again, the Union is probably going to have to give up this line. I don't know where they're going to end up finding themselves able to create a defense short of Cemetery Hill. That really is beginning to feel like I'm going to have to fall all the way back, if I can. And that's a big if. It's hard to disengage in this game, unlike in most of the others. Look, I go, you go allows you to pull your whole force back all at once. This is allowing for exploits to slip in and timing to go badly. And honestly, you know, that's the kind of thing where, what is it, Sykes, I think, who wandered out. I don't know if it was Sykes or Sickles. Wandered out in front of the Union line and got himself in a stupid position. I want to say Sickles because of hammering Sickles, but I think it was Sykes, actually. Anyway. So we keep going. Drew out of their cup. Unfortunately, the only thing they had left is Kilpatrick, and he and Stewart are playing this little game here. I'm having a hard time. This is the best defensive terrain facing in this direction. I only got half movement. I might try to shift around and take some defense across here, because it looks like it would be really hard for them to exploit that gap, but I can always shift Greg. He's on direct command. I can't force anything. I have to get an initiative to use him, but I also don't know that Stewart is also under direct command. I don't know that he's not. But I'm left with no great options here, to tell you the truth. So I shifted over here. Rhodes was Early was next, I'm sorry. And he moved his force over here, more compact attack position. You don't want to attack all along the line in this game. It feels like spreading out makes sense. It does in most games, but remember, these are individual brigades are 3 or 4 pieces in general. So at the same scale that like the CWB game allows you to have, pretty much you have 1 or 2 pieces per hex, but generally it's 1 per hex as long as they're still reasonable sized. So anyway, this is not that unreasonable, but what it means is trying to cover a lot of ground, the attacker can form a dense formation and really threaten you, and that's what we're seeing really everywhere, where my unfamiliarity. But then the big shock, Stewart, the only way he could do this was on double ones. He's inactive. Now I can move him a couple hexes, but I don't have any real desire to telegraph anything. I'm going to sit on this position and see if he can wake himself up ever. It's going to be hard. Maybe Lee will have to go have a chat with him. Yeah, Lee's all the way over here. Went next, I shifted him a hex. I don't know if I rolled an activation for him. There. Oh, Kilpatrick's in the defensive mode, so it's Buford. Yeah, okay. Let me make sure nothing terrible happens. He's pretty good, but then again, so was Stewart. Yeah, he was able to do that. The problem is, you do this little shift, and look, I opened up a little gap. Kilpatrick had opened up a little gap. I don't want that gap. Now, defending this may not be that big a deal, but it's good terrain, and I kind of don't want to just give it up, whereas this isn't, and I could spread out. But that's the whole thing. There's this desire to spread out, to cover, to prevent an outflank, to prevent the enemy from being able to penetrate your line very easily. But they're able to operate on their attack in a really dense formation. Now, on the bright side, between terrain and other effects, it might just be that it's pretty hard to actually attack unless you can get some kind of massive, ugly outflanking position in play. And you can see, I mean, Third Corps got away. Yeah, sort of. Took a lot of damage over here. First Corps, not so certain that they're going to be able to. It's going to be a slow extraction of Robinson, which means all of First Corps is going to be bogged down in the fighting there for a while. That is the end of cups and commands that players can initiate. There would have been a possibility, say, Greg got burned into the cup instead of his current orders, whatever the hell they are. They were just directing command. And that means, from now on, we go to the march orders, which should go a lot more smoothly, so I think we'll finish this turn. It's also like 4 or 5, well, it's after 4. It's like 5 in the morning or something like that. Oh, look, we're beginning to get dawn. How pretty. And again, you know, in like 4 or 5 hours, I probably should go shopping if I want to go while it's chilly at all. But I'm not sleepy, so I don't want to take a nap. I slept a lot yesterday, and I'm not I'm probably not going to be awake enough that I want to go. But I kind of have to. Things up in terms of the march orders. With the Confederates winning the initiative, they won 2 in a row, but they haven't started the second one. We chose to do this one, and look, another inactive division. You know, here maybe Howard, he has shit tons of points, should have spent a point. I don't know if he's in command range, though. It's hard to calculate between the two, and I just said, screw it, I'll roll. And this is a lot more likely, with only a 2 leadership, to have gone inactive. And that might end up slowing down 11th Corps. We'll reload a pipe. But one of the sad things about being this age or whatever, one of my dancing buddies, that's a really nice guy overall, ended up dying this week. And I have no idea why or whatever. It means tomorrow's going to be fucking weird. I hope, I don't know. I just don't know. But anyway, on with things. The last Confederate unit, which was this thing, which I don't even know if he can go inactive. So, like, I know he can't go inactive off of his command points roll, but I think he went inactive off the activity roll, and now I've got to look that up and see if it's allowed or whatever. Because he's an independent unit, and somewhere or another it says they can't go inactive, but I thought it was just due to one, it was in one section and not both. It appears to actually be both. They roll for command points to spend on themselves but get a -3 DRM. If they do roll inactive, they simply do not generate any CCPs. Fine. On their subsequent rolls, on their subsequent activity rolls, if they roll inactive, the division only receives half activity for that turn only and may continue to roll for CCPs. Well, inactive isn't even half, it's 2 hexes, but whatever. Anyway, I'll remove the marker and just say they can't become inactive, period, the end. Obviously, if you've got guys out here and you could detach them kind of at will or whatever, it would be a lot easier. But like Stuart, he can save up points to activate himself because he has a CCP marker. He's not an independent. He is the Cav Corps. The Union and all the other Cav leaders don't have that, but they can't go inactive, which, I don't know. It's hard to justify because it's like, look, this guy's not in the battle. All he's doing is protecting this wagon. He's not really in any danger. Kind of makes sense he'd go inactive. And everybody's moved. Hancock's up there to give Gibson his orders. Unfortunately for him, I'm sorry, to give Caldwell his orders. Gibson went on inactive. This, oh shit, I want to move these up. Sedgwick, these guys are quite far from Sedgwick, even though they were like just a couple hexes away and can't receive bonuses easily. I will go to deploying the new units on the board. We got 5th Corps, 11th beginning to show up, I guess. I mean, they're going to trail off, but I want to make sure I don't get collisions and can see what the hell's going on, which I can't with this combination. 6th Corps over here cutting in. 2nd Corps Hayes has decided to swing around up here, thinking it'll be quicker. That's getting me, I think, on this road, but it's fucking hard to tell. So that's 4335. Yeah, well, 4335 is here. So that's not what it is. This kind of cuts between 2 hexes, which is what's the problem there. But yeah, that's the same big road that Caldwell is heading up. Whereas this part of 2nd Corps is kind of piddling its way around. Does it have a way? It's gonna be heading up towards the same road, I think. I don't know. It's got a long fucking walk. Plus, Hancock's got to go back and talk some sense into him because he's decided, yeah, well, we hear gunfire, but didn't he say approach slowly or something like that? Don't bring on a general engagement. Let's not bring it on. Let's stay back. Something along those lines. Having some issues with the map right now. So yeah, I got to deploy my units and do the bookkeeping stuff at the end, which, other than weather, I don't think anybody's in recovery except for these guys who don't want to be. So that goes away. Adjust morale. That's going to be where the shaken markers and whatnot come off, I guess. And then the command degradation. Worse than I thought. So I'm hunting the shaken markers, the artillery. Forgot about mentioning them. Flipping them over. Looked at the rules a little bit more carefully here. So it says if disrupted units are not in an enemy zone of control, zone of influence. But if they are, they take a morale check to see if they can avoid the shaken. So yeah, another whole series of die rolls. And what's worse is you're allowed to withdraw and do a retreat, which can cause other problems. Oh, fuck, man. This is just so tedious. What's worse, unlike, in the middle of the initiatives and whatnot, where I feel like I can just pause whenever I like, because it's like American Civil War, which I've put away now. I don't need their counters anymore. Where I can stop at the midpoints in any turn. I don't feel like I can stop during these cleanup phases. It'll be too hard to try to figure out where the fuck I am, especially since I'm like midway through the recover morale portion. It turns out that in addition to being a very cumbersome system, the units are much less likely to be able to stick around. You still have to make a shaken recovery. You can retreat first. If you can retreat outside a zone of influence, you don't have to roll. Fine. But remember, artillery have several hexes of zone of influence. Cav have 3 hexes. Infantry have 2. So if you want to hold a position or continue your attack, in some cases, you still withdraw, but if you're within a couple of hexes of the enemy, you still have to make a die roll, and that die roll can cause additional cohesion hits, further retreats, all kind of problems on you. So even though you retreated, you may still have to roll the dice, and bad things can happen, and bad things happened all over the place. So I think both keeping an attack going and keeping a defense in place are going to be very, very difficult in this system. In some ways, that's going to reduce the casualty numbers if we were tracking them somehow. We're not. So there's no way to tell. It's just, effective or ineffective units, destroyed units, whatever. But you're not getting a straight casualty number the way that you do in TSS. Do you get one in CWB? It's hard to tell. You mark off boxes, and they're permanent losses to the unit, but it's not a clear, these are casualties in this battle, in terms of a number that you can come up with. You could do a multiplication, but you'd probably come up with something that felt way too high if you did, because units can get really, really badly mauled. And, I think those boxes, like the counters here, are kind of an abstraction. Okay, so I did something. God. Yeah, it's really easy to get shaken markers. It's really hard to get rid of them because you're making a morale check with all the penalties that gave you that shaken marker, right? And if you manage to get another shaken or worse, you end up taking additional cohesion hits. If you end up getting the 8 or less, you end up broken, which is what happened to that guy over there. Wow. Plus, it's really, really painful to play. That's the worst part of it, right? Although I feel like the units have a lot less staying power than maybe they should, but on the other hand, you know, it's only part of a brigade. Pull that part out, more of the brigade takes its place, whatever. But it's a painful process. So after clearing everything off the operational map, we got some 6th Corps coming on here, 5th Corps sliding up here, 11th coming up behind Heath. I think, I don't remember what the Doubleday position was. Was it this road? I think it's further south, but I got 11th Corps coming in a nasty place. Heath's not happy about this, I can tell you that. So there may be a bright spot in the Union defense of Hare's Ridge there. And meanwhile, you know, I got 5th Corps, more of it over here. Yeah, sure, some of it. Some stuff is coming in all over the place, and they're trying to find their way. Like, this is 11th Corps heading here. Well, these guys are going to try to head up here, but 5th Corps was heading to go support 3rd Corps. And meanwhile, 12th Corps has gathered up in a big line. They're going to try to get on the right of 1st Corps. I don't know what to do, you know, with 6th Corps, which is just running all up here with Meade. My intention had been to kind of get them on Cemetery Hill, get 2nd Corps over here, and try to start devolving myself some kind of defense that is more lasting. But yeah. Anyway, I have done everything except the weather, I guess. That shoots all the way up to hazy as we're entering the 7 a.m. turn. It looks like it's going to be a real hot day. At least it's starting out hot. And look, it's daylight. Okay, here it is, I guess, very early Sunday morning, and this day is just beginning. But over here, we're looking at the 7 a.m. turn starting. And I rolled for Jones and Robertson. They have a 1 in 10 chance of coming in. They did. That's a mixed blessing. I'll be getting that cav coming in, but it means that they've abandoned the wagons, which come in on doubles, but not on a 9 or a 10. If you get double 9 or 10s, they've been intercepted. Now, there are a lot of fucking shaking units on the board. I guess those are failed morale checks and stuff. I remember that happening. But now that these guys are coming in down there on what, the Emmitsburg Road? What's it? Sharpsburg Road. Given that they're coming in, that changes the chance of the wagon being intercepted to doubles of a 6 or higher. Now, we don't find out what happened to the wagon until I get doubles, but they're not protected by those cav. I don't have much control over anything. Lee could spend points to improve the chances of the cav coming in. I didn't really do that. But anyway, onward to all the command roles and trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, because it's been a few days. And so for the Confederates, Lee got a fair amount of points. He got like 5 points. He spent 1 each on 1st and 3rd Corps, and they're being relatively active. I think I gave McLaws another attack order. Yeah, I gave McLaws another attack order. All of 3rd Corps is under attack orders. Hood's under direct orders, which will allow him to close. He could conceivably attack if need be under those. Pickett is on march orders. Stewart cleared up his inactivity and put himself under direct orders. But Ewell is problematic. Ewell is not able to get any points off of Lee still, and just does not have enough points to keep conducting an attack. Part of the advantage that 1st and 3rd Corps have is they have the overnight orders, like orders they got yesterday, are triggered now in terms of like some extra points, and they're getting them up until 10 a.m. So, that'll help maintain some kind of effectiveness there, but Ewell doesn't have any of those. He wasn't within range of Lee ever. And so I put him all in the cup. And then all the Cav, the 2 new units in Imboden, are just under march orders. Now I have to do the Union. And I'm already tired, man. Definitely more cumbersome than anything in CWB. And the command stage of this game is actually not the most painful part of it by any means. Union, there's a lot more die rolling, but most of the stuff is doing march orders. Let's see. We've got an inactive unit back here. Hancock's gonna have to find his way back there, but he spent a couple of points to get Caldwell out of his R&R orders and into march orders, right? All the Union Cav on the board except Huey is in defend orders. They have to roll to be able to get the points for them. Buford and Kilpatrick had already had the points, so they only have to succeed at getting 1 point. But for Kilpatrick, that's kind of iffy. He's at -1 on the die rolls, so there's a fair chance he might not. All of 1st Corps is now in defend orders. That meant a big expenditure by Wadsworth. Reynolds isn't really able to get commands out to anyone else. He might have been able to get a command out to this division, but he can't give anything to a division. So that doesn't really help. He's not able to get anything to 3rd Corps. He's not able to do anything for Buford. He's not able to reach Howard down here at 11th Corps, so there's not much he can do. Meade gave points definitely to Sedgwick. I think I forgot to give points over here to Slocum, whom I probably should have spent a point on, but he's fine. It worked out just peachy. And I think we're going to hold there. I feel like I've gone more than I wanted to, like in a lot of ways, and roll for initiative. Both sides are probably going to spend nearly all, if not all, their points on initiative. The Union has remember, these just go away if I don't use them. And the only thing I can kind of use them for from now on is to move units, is to move commanders. So I get to move my commander once for free. And if I want to multi-move him, I just expend more points. Well, I feel like my lines I don't feel like Meade needs to run up and take command of 3rd Corps particularly, although it would help because 3rd Corps is in a position where they didn't have the points to throw both their units into defend. Now, I'm planning on falling back with them and maybe a little bit with the Cav, although with it in defend, it doesn't move as fast. But yeah, and try to extricate Robinson or whoever's stuck behind enemy lines there. I don't know how much more I can take. I really don't. Anyway, the Union, with their larger pool of command points than Lee gets, you can make arguments either way about that. Look, Reynolds historically died, so he did not have this early enough on the first day. So he didn't have, a prolonged effect on the battlefield. But he's very unlikely to be killed in this game, and therefore he's adding, when you count the penalty against Meade, he's adding probably 3 to 4 command points at the army level. And so there was a +8 to the die roll. I rolled a 9 and a 3. That gets me an 11 for the Union. Yeah, you're not going to beat that. So, yep, Union is in the initiative in this point. And that means they get to react and grab one of their direct commands if they want. Conceivably, if I really wanted a defense to fire off, I could go into my chit cup. Looks like almost everything in there is a defense, but I gotta figure out what I want to fire, because honestly, what I probably most need to get moving is actually something over here from First Corps, which are units under defense orders. And in the midst of Heath trying to attack Buford here, Heath gets wounded. Actually, this is the defensive fire requirements. Trying to do things with one hand, fucking slickery counters spread all over the goddamn place. Not the first time this has happened, but when you add it to everything else, man. There's another factor in this whole mess, if I can fucking find my pieces. Which is that as units shake and get flung back and whatnot, they lose whatever positioning they have in terms of like being next to their brigade, etc., which you really kind of have to do. You have to keep these brigades together, right? Now, they're not supposed to be intermingled or whatever, but beyond that, they're not allowed to stack with other brigades and all kind of shit like that. So it's like, even if you were able to keep your units kind of together through the advance and everything, which I work really hard to do, the realities of the combat end up adding to that disruption. Now, that disruption's realistic, believable, whatever, but the game makes it such a pain in the ass to maintain, because the brigades are split into 3-4 units. It's like they don't actually operate together, and it's not like it's broken by regiment, where again you could make an argument of there were some detachments, like a couple regiments would be moved from one unit to another, or a couple brigades would be moved from one division to another. You don't have that kind of freedom in the game, which, look, you got to abstract some things away, but a hell of a lot more should have been abstracted away in this game, I think. Just feels like they did the wrong things, and here we got him still here. So what happened was Heath got a wound result. His horse was shot out from under him. That means he comes back next turn, so I put him over here. I don't know if he has a replacement commander at this point. That's not actually covered in the game. If he was dead, he would have a replacement that would show up immediately. But if he had a replacement, that would just really confuse the issue. I need something to mark that he's coming back, so I've just decided, fuck it, he doesn't. No one's in command right now, which is fine. I can always look at him, look at his backside, and say, okay, I'll give him the 2-point command roll that he would get from his promotion, from his replacement commander, if he was wounded. So, and just not allow whoever it is, you know, whatever brigade commander would take place, to be actually leading troops. Because there's basically no cost to losing the brigade commanders. There's an infinite number of them, essentially. Right. So that was the first activation. I mean, the combat is enough of a hassle without, like, fucking glossy counters. I choose to move Hood with direct command. That allows him to engage Wadsworth lightly. And, you know, basically trying to prevent any kind of appropriate withdrawal here. I think Wadsworth has to try to defend that line. He's not in good shape, but anyway, got a little bit of a hit on him. Nothing impressive. Basically 2 cohesion hits to 1 for 2 of my units, which is kind of how it works out. You bring extra numbers in, you're gonna take extra casualties, because the cohesion hits, you get less cohesion hits per unit, but you have more units, right? Which is why things like supporting units are really, really valuable, because they're not actually engaged, but they add an odds level, essentially, which is probably what you're going to get off of throwing that extra unit in the line. It's hard to tell. I wouldn't have had the option here. I tend too often to just try to mass the men in and do a World War I style attack with as many men as possible. But yeah, the supporting fire is really advantageous because you're not putting those units at risk on either side. And both people had it in this case. I'm about fatigued after moving two divisions. I feel no love for this system, basically, which should be pretty fucking obvious by now. But yeah, it's just so taxing to do anything. Inadvertently cheated again because of the way different commands are handled very differently. I got an initiative with the Union and just fired off Robinson. And no, I gotta wait until I get him from the chit cup. But I had already started, and I'm like, screw it, just let it go. And so far, 2 of his units have been destroyed trying to get out. The artillery moved over here, got a little bit of firepower over here, but they're just doomed, right? And then for this final unit, we got an attack, and the Confederates took a cohesion hit where the Union didn't. I'm going to have to do morale checks for that. But I got doubles. So we see how the artillery how the artillery ammo depletion works. So we got the doubles, a roll of 9 or less on 2 dice will be an ammo depletion, which just gives it a hit. I only used 1 artillery, so it's pretty unlikely, but there is a morale effect for this. It does not take place. Now I make the morale checks for the Confederate units. But yeah, Robinson's beginning to dissolve. We can take a look at the effects there. He's almost shaken, and the Army has also been taking hits for those units as they are destroyed. Again, 1 divisional activation, and I'm pooped, man. It's just there's so many die rolls, so many things when stuff is engaged that, you know, a game, I'm thinking, there's a game that I don't like very much, the Avalon Hill Little Round Top, kind of on the subject. It feels very cumbersome, sort of like a more painful version of the TSS type systems, but it feels right in terms of, like, the size of the units and everything, we're talking, I think there's 2 regiments on each side or something along those lines. And I don't remember if the units are company sized or pieces of companies, but there's a lot of pain to the system. However, to some extent you can say, look, at that small scale, etc., keeping track of all that information isn't too bad. Plus there's not a lot of stacking in the game, which helps. But I just always found it kind of annoying. Some of it may just be the rule book. It's one of those stupid fold out pieces of paper Avalon Hill used far too often. It may not actually be a worse, more complex game than TSS is in a lot of ways. I remember there being a little bit more record keeping and a little bit more special shit going on, but whatever. But that feels appropriate at that scale. The amount of effort here feels like it's higher, for the same amount of counters engaged, whatever. It feels like a much, much heavier level of effort. And there's just so much more on the field here. And it's not at that level of detail, right? It's just all these multiple checks, see if the command can move. First, the whole command system, which I find cumbersome and painful compared to orders writing or the simplistic system of TSS, where it's just like, are you in command radius? Great. Then add to that, a unit might have to make multiple morale checks for a single combat, because as happened with Robinson, I had to make a morale check because I couldn't afford to retreat, basically. Maybe I should have done the retreat first, but that would have abandoned this unit, and I kind of... Anyway, I couldn't afford to retreat, but that precipitated the retreat that was required precipitated another morale check. Now, the first one would have been very painful, and I probably would have been wrecked from that anyway. But yeah, it's just... Maybe if you're really on top of things, you can reduce the number of rolls by being more clever at certain times. The goal not being to reduce the number of rolls, but you don't want to take 2 morale checks if you can avoid it. Even just from a game, in terms of like strategy or whatever, it's generally not a good idea to chance it a second time. But I just feel like I'm blundering around and not really getting a good picture of what's happening, except when I stand back and look and see, oh look, we're cutting the Union Army in pieces here and whatnot. I finished the Tolstoy short stories I was reading, and probably will do a video on that and whatever. But that means I'm freed up to start reading some other rules. And I may just kind of muddle through this turn as much as I can while I'm doing this and then just quit. Because honestly, it's just not worth the effort. It's an interesting situation. It really is. I like the situation the game caused. I like the fact that the Union is really getting knocked on its ass here. More than they historically were in that first day. And some of that, I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know. It's just... the rules to prevent you from entering weren't effective enough, but what we ended up getting is exactly the situation the designer wrote those rules to prevent, which is kind of an all-out fight with all the forces showing up at once. Now, certainly all the Confederates showed up at once. The Union's coming in more piecemeal, but Yeah, it's telling. It's telling. So far, we haven't had a single Confederate loss. I want to talk because I put so much fucking effort in so far in just moving three divisions, right? So the Union got the next pick. I drew Chit this time and got Wadsworth, and he moved across to try and defend. I'm not sure what the hell this guy's doing. That's part of Robinson. Guess he's forced to be here now. Unless, yeah, I'm pretty sure Robinson is pretty eliminated. To try to cover here, I might end up moving Rowley or whoever is Doubleday's replacement. Try to pull away. I think we're going to have to give up Hare's Ridge. Things just don't look, I mean, we can't have this happening, right? But again, Wadsworth ended up getting bonus movement, which on defensive means that it's actually like, I don't know, 6.5 points or something like that, and doesn't cause fatigue to move more rapidly. So that there's that at least. Well, Kilpatrick went, he did some artillery fire, and that's it. It's going to be such a pain to hunt these guys down, looking for artillery units that are flipped over at the end of the turn. There's just so much, right, about this. Anyway, I had been using these upside down, like flipped over, but I see that I actually want to be able to see which units have the defensive options open. I mean, can I remember? Maybe, but I think being able to see them is of more worth. Whatever it was that I was flipping them, upside down, was kind of the, hey, put it out of my mind. Well, it doesn't really help for that. But then Humphreys pulled back, and I had a pain in the ass trying to figure out what was his, what was other people, what was Bernie's. But Bernie didn't get an action. Instead, the Confederates got to move one of their, they took a pick from, weird noises, from the chit pulls, got early, and I decided to throw him in to an attack that, I wasn't sure I wanted to make, but if I'm leaving one of the divisions unsupported. Now, one of the interesting things here, these are a couple of the sharpshooters. Those could retreat as cav, but if they retreat, it would have allowed an opening to get around the flank, and they did end up retreating a hex from combat results, but that would have allowed an enfilade on these guys if if I had retreated any further, because I could have, well, no, I would have stopped at the zone of control, so I guess not. Yeah. Oh, well, I should have retreated. Prevent the attack. Because it was not a good odds attack for them, and you can see they got hit, but to hell with them. It's just too hard to remember all the different mechanisms in this, and therefore you will get, at least from someone like me, particularly suboptimal play in a way that I don't feel like I do as poorly in the kind of systems I'm used to. Now, again, you could get used to this kind of stuff. I think you can get used to the system enough that you can sort of start using it properly, in the sense of, like, taking advantage of its quirks and whatnot. Not all of which are gaming. But, in fact, maybe most of them are not. But nothing, I think, gets you over the hurdle of the sheer amount of effort in terms of die rolls and pawing through pieces and all that, compared to other games with cleaner designs. But yeah, we're still at a position where, like, more of Ewell could come slamming into Bernie, who's kind of not, he's kind of been left hanging out there. The only thing the Union has going for them is they have the initiative, but that just says you win ties. Honestly, once again, I'm like looking at it and I'm like, yeah, what if I draw? So I'm fine if I draw Bernie or whatever and I fall back. I'm good with that. But what if the Confederates get to go and they draw either Rhodes or Johnson? I don't want to do the combat, man. I'm going to go away for a while. And I'm finding I'm just wasting my time. Like, you know, I started reading 1822 Mex, but there's always other stuff that I can, like, that's easier to grab hold of than, like, reading or whatever, right? It's just, I don't know. It's the great problem of the interwebs for me is like, there's always something I can do. And a terrible thing happened. Well, I was trying to move Bernie's unit, Graham, the new commander, went inactive. Only can move, well, actually no, he's got a 0.5. Never mind, he can't go inactive. Worst he could get is half movement. I might be able to pull back a little further then. Some remaining moves. Johnson moves for the big outflank over here. Tried some artillery fire. Counter battery kind of screwed me up. And went over here to move the inactive unit of 2nd Corps. That was in the cup because it's inactive, so yeah. And I moved Hancock down to join them. But now Rhodes is launching an attack up against Bernie. And we're basically hoping to do a lot of damage to 3rd Corps and 1st Corps. Kind of like 1st and 11th were beat up in the first day, but I don't know. It looks like Union reinforcements are coming on the scene more quickly than they did historically. Again, I'm not sure about this. Certainly everything was further forward to begin with, but with the weight of Confederate forces coming in, it's just like the whole engagement is starting up faster. These attacks were generally not at good odds, but there's a real interesting advantage to the attacker in this system, which is when you're attacking, you tend to gain ground, right? Like, your successes mean you gain ground. The defender usually doesn't want to gain ground. And when the attacker gains ground, they end up advancing and cutting off parts of the defending forces. So now Bernie's guns here are actually going to have a hard time extricating themselves. They can, but they're very close. Like if there had been another success here, or if I had stayed even here and not fallen back, well, if I had been in this woods, which I never was, I was over here. But even this hex would have been sufficient. So yeah, if I had stayed even here and not fallen back with the attackers, I would have been putting more pressure on, and these guys couldn't get out easily because artillery is not allowed to enter an enemy zone of control, which prevents it from getting out of places. It also makes it very, very possible, like it makes it impossible to, like, you know, use them like tanks, which I was doing earlier on, but that's okay. Having conducted a few divisions again, I'm fatigued. I know that I don't have enough in me to complete the last couple of commands that are in the cups. I think basically both sides have one direct command available, which I could easily do, right? One is Stuart moving and one is Huey. I got no problem with that, and I could easily do that. But I don't have the energy in me to do all the move orders that I have in place, because they're going to require a little bit of thought. You know, it's not trivial taking a look at the Union situation. I had plans, right? 12th Corps was going to come up here, 5th Corps was going to go here. It may still be valid plans, but I don't feel like I can cover this gap anymore. Hood pulling into there has made that impossible. So I may be actually reinforcing and trying to replace 3rd Corps and let it fall back and maybe try to find a place to rest. It's pretty beaten up. 12th Corps is probably still going to go where it's heading. And I've got like 6th Corps coming up here. It's just, the directing traffic aspect of it is going to take more energy than I really have right now anymore. After having taken care of some combats. The combats are just so tiring. Funny, I still have kind of the point of view that I had with Vietnam when I was going relatively strongly in it, but eventually, like this game, that game just tired me out with the activity involved in it. Some of that bothered me was more the sameness of all the search and destroy missions and the like, as opposed to here, I'm actually seeing interesting stuff develop and everything. So this may hold my interest a little better, even though I think it's nowhere near as good a game. Last 2 activations, I'm kind of concerned. I probably shouldn't have delayed with Stuart, or with Huey for that matter, anywhere near as long. As it turned out, Huey got the first opportunity to move and covered this main road here, which would have been a way for Stuart to slip through a little faster. Instead, he's curving around up here near Wolf Hill, which shows up on some other games as well. It depends on the scope, the size of the game and whatever, in terms of what it is willing to show. But I think it's on the TSS map. Pretty sure it's on the Thunder map. It's here behind Culps. Always looked like an interesting location to me. And now we're kind of squeezing through here in a bit of danger because 2nd Corps is coming up. We really don't want to face infantry like that. We want to get behind Union 3rd Corps where we can cause some problems. But chances are the Union Cav is going to be able to fall back and block our route anyway. We probably should have just not taken the movement, but since I had already figured out that I wanted to do this, I went ahead with it. Now we're just on the movement orders, and then I got to make, some. I'll load this one up because it's been super long anyway. But then I got to start making some heavy decisions as to whether I want to keep going. Problem is, the game, all the pain and tedium's in kind of the meat of the game, and then I get to the end of a turn and interesting big maneuvers are happening. Stuff is looking cool. One thing that is going to help me make that decision is the recovery from shake and having to roll the dice on all the units. I missed that before, caught it last turn. It pissed the hell out of me, and it may be the final straw. And, God help me, but I have a hard time walking away from a game. So, I really should with this one. I know that. But right now I'm feeling kind of a little bit of pleasure because I'm getting to see big formations moving and everything. But that's what interests me, not how detailed can you make a more abstracted combat system than I'm used to. Like, how many fucking modifiers and how many different die rolls can you throw into it? It's not even how detailed. It's how cumbersome can you make it? How painful can you make the combat system for? Okay, it's not lying to you the way the fire and movement ones do, but it's trying to take into account all the stuff that those systems take into account in a more realistic manner, and I would rather the little lies that, I mean, look, every game is an abstraction. Every game is going to have to lie about or cover up certain things. And what is this one doing? Well, it's more abstracted, but it's also containing all of the influences that the fire and movement type systems kind of incorporate without having to create clear, unrealistic situations. But it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And I got mistaken. Again, because of the way the command tables are set up, etc. I got 4 units under attack orders here. I've moved a number of the march order units, right? Move these guys, move these guys. Moved a couple down here. And then I just realized, wait a minute, why aren't there chits in the cup for these? No, wait, there aren't supposed to be chits in the cup for those. Like, my thought was attack orders should come out. And yeah, all 4 attack orders. Probably the biggest single sort of lump of things in my game I should have been doing. And those aren't getting burned. The basically my rolls for the Union, 3 picks would have come from there, and if I wanted the attack orders to happen, I would have if I wanted them to happen, I would have had to, I would have been able to trigger them on my own turns, right? Instead of Stuart or whatever. And I got successful turns, so some of them kind of have to happen. I may actually choose to throw into the cup because as burned, because I may not want to pay. You pay the cost for the attack order when it's actually executed, not when you choose to make it. And there are some, for example, Heath down here, I don't really feel like he's got an attack available to him anymore. Pretty sure Pender does, but both Heath and McLaws, I may not want to spend the fatigue points to do their attack orders. Those can be very... See, the thing is, I don't want to attack without the attack orders, though. That's the problem, and I kind of want to keep attacking. So yeah, I don't know what to do, because basically I had, after Stuart, I had 1, 2, 3, I think 4, no, 3 probably, because I think this guy was inactive already. Oh wait, no, hold on, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 Union Confederates got to force the Union to go. So I think all of these actually should trigger instead. So, all right. Well, this is going to take a lot longer, and I may not be done today because 4 divisions under attack, that's painful. And Pender hit first, probably not wise. I probably wanted to hit with Anderson first, try to get rid of these. I could have shifted him up to hit. The unit I was most worried about was this. I had some kind of low odds attacks, which the Confederates paid for, but they also gained ground down here. I'm trying to figure out how this possibly could have happened. Oh, this is Yeah, he wasn't actually engaged. We just moved up into touch with him. I guess. Now, this was the unit that was engaged and we got knocked back. But here we gained ground and pushed the Union back. Now, this game is kind of weird. The amount of influence that individual leader command over a single battle roll has. So, and I understand the argument for it. You have to remember, Lee said something along the lines of, if Pender could have stayed in his horse one more day, we would have won, or something like that. And his big 4 rating, that's 4 odds shifts that he gives you. He is really, really effective. Now, even your shittiest leader gives you an odds shift by being present. Like, there's nothing with a 0 or anything like that. And there are very few leaders with less than a 2. Like, there are a couple of 1s, but for the most part, 2s, yeah. There we go. 2s are pretty much what we're looking at across the board, and especially for established leaders, like, a replacement, sure. And that's a really, really major factor, right? Like, if there's a leader present, I mean, just think about what, an odds shift is a multiple, right? The difference between a 2-to-1 odd, the difference between 1.5 and 2-to-1 is one of those odds shifts. The difference between 2 and 3-to-1 is one of those odds shifts. In terms of the pluses that you get here. Now, obviously, look, there's a lot of randomness, but I was able to make fights that I had a couple of points of bonus on the cohesion hit level, even though I was at significantly less odds overall and fighting in terrain and whatnot. You can really do quite a bit by using your leaders. Now, of course, using your leaders every time is a risk, but whatever. And yep, I did a division on attack, and I am pretty damn close to being wiped out mentally. I may use Anderson, try to wipe out some of the artillery. We're seeing some really big effects, though, on the Union, and these may be non-recoverable. Robinson is broken now, his division. Doubleday is taking some hits, Wadsworth a few hits. The Union Army is back over 110 points of hits that it's taken. And some of that is the losses. A little bit of it is terrain losses, but the majority is actually casualties. And yeah, we're just getting the floor mopped. At some point or another, the Confederates have to stop attacking because they're getting close to the point where their units are going to start falling apart. One thing I did notice, which I had as a question, the first hit on a unit can't be recovered. Well, I wasn't sure if that meant on each side, but I did find here, member unit flips back to full strength side, except nighttime reorganization, which means that R&R can allow you to recover the side of the counter that you're on. You'll always have one cohesion hit on you, which is fucking annoying, to tell you the truth. Like, I want to recover the unit all the way up. And one of the easy ways to tell whether or not I can do that is there a counter under it? Still, okay, I have to look, but I can't just glance and say, oh, they're not recovered yet, right? Like, they have a hit on them. And, compare it to another system that used a similar mechanism, which was the banish all their fears. you didn't have as much crowding, you had bigger counters, all kind of stuff going in favor of that. But also, it didn't have the flipped over side and all this. So like, I can't even just peek and see, is that a 1 there? Okay, I'm not going to be affected by it, stuff like that. Oh boy. I really wanted to get this out of the way, but I also really don't want to play. Like, I really wanted to end this turn. And, you know, there's something kind of pleasant watching the maneuvering happen, watching the units get into place and see how the battle is likely to develop. Although the idea of trying to insert, you know, 5th or 6th Corps to take a place up here and to relieve 3rd Corps, man, that sounds like such a nightmare to try to do maneuver-wise in terms of the game. Some of it because of the chit pull element, the pulsing, really, more than the chit pull. I kind of don't mind pulsing when it's like, I can move 1 stack of units or a small selected group of units. But here, the division at a time, some of the units want to do this, some want to, you know, some need to fall back and try to recover. Some need to fill in the line and all this. And it's just like, I'm doing this fucking juggling all over this complex terrain field that, you know, because of the differences in movement point costs for so many different terrain types, right? Again, something else that, sure, it's more realistic, but it's a level of realism that I don't really enjoy seeing because it's always too much effort. And it's, I think, a big part of like why the Battles of the Age of Reason and the La Bataille series is not fun for me. There's way too many terrain types, and the interactions with each type of unit is different. Like, you know, the artillery, the wagon, and supply, they have different columns for this. Is that different from TSS? No. I think they had the same switches, you know, foot infantry. They actually have more because they have like deployment considerations like line and column. But what they don't have is so many different terrain types. You know, minor slope A, or minor slope, major slope, and cliff. And there's 1 extra in there. I don't even know what rough is. I found some at one point. Kicking around somewhere nasty. It's this shit here. It's kind of rocky looking things. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard when you're looking in a section and you're like, oh, I don't know if I see any of that terrain. You know? The biggest thing I have the trouble with, though, is really distinguishing between what's a minor slope, what's a major slope. The cliffs I think I can usually tell, and then I can kind of work from there. So this I think is a major slope, this is a minor slope. This looks pretty clear here, and then this will be a cliff. So I've got everything in close alignment here, and I can see it all. Just like when I look at a road, and I say, this is not a major road, and there's something smaller than it, so it must be the secondary road, right? And then this is whatever the tertiary road, the trail. So where I can see the difference clearly in a given hex, it's really not that hard. Although the slopes are worse than the roads. And the roads are pretty bad. You know, I mean, I look at something like this and I'm like, okay, I think this is secondary road here. Is this trail? I don't know, just not sure. This is, but this, I just can't tell, you know? I mean, I'm looking and I'm like, are they different? And here I know they're different. And I guess if I don't know they're different, I treat them as secondary. But, gosh. It's kind of like with the slopes. If I can't fucking tell for sure, it's probably a minor slope because they seem to be more common. Let me find where I saw both all types again. I had ridge here. All this looks like it's minor slope if this is major slope, because this is clearly different from these. But I'm not sure. You know? I'm really not sure. And it's just, you know. Hey, thanks for putting all these different terrain types in and making them hard to distinguish from one another so I can't actually use the system as written. Not that I enjoy using it. And, you know, it's like somehow or another this terrain chart is just a tiny bit worse than what I'm used to. And then there's the map. Like, the map makes it unplayable. I think I could deal with this if the map were clear. If the map were clear, I think I could deal with it. But it's so hard, and I have to paw through the stacks so often. And I know I'm just complaining and bitching. It's because I can't make my mind up. Do I want to try to do another fucking division? Or do I want to just have a beer, read some rules? This is so hideous. I think I decided on tea outside and reading instead of beer. I don't want to do this shit. But I realized part of why I play these things that I don't like. I mean, some of it is, yeah, I do want to kind of see what's going to happen, right? Maybe that's part of why I stay alive. Seeing my predictions coming true, as miserable as they are. But I think a big part of it is my dad sort of instilled this, do this because it builds character type of idea, you know? And somehow I incorporated that to do things that aren't at all useful, that you don't really like this. Because there's some sort of character building aspect to it. And it's weird because what I do is I end up ignoring, like, I should be outside doing yard work, right? I've neglected it. The heat and whatnot has caused that to happen. I have, you know, weeds growing on my hill again, all over my yard, whatever. And I have some vines that I have to pull and just all kind of stuff I need to do. I have some terracing I want to take care of that I do a little bit at a time and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I look at it and all the free time, basically all the time that I can expend in a day that I'm not playing Raid or up at night jerking off or whatever the fuck I do while I'm playing Raid. I find myself doing this, you know. I'm not going out for walks. I'm not doing the yard work. I'm not doing anything that might be better in general for my life. Although I am able to convince myself to go outside and sit and have a read. Geez, a beer doesn't sound that bad. Like, my throat is kind of scratchy and everything, and tea doesn't do the same effect. Like, I started thinking vodka, and I'm like, I don't want to get drunk yet. Here I am after midnight, trying to figure out whether I'm recording or not. I think I am. I don't think I was at first. May have clicked it on and off real quick or something. As usual, I frittered my day away. But to be fair, I have a lot of raid that I feel like I need to do. You know, whatever. There are events that I wanted to participate in. I'm questioning them. I'm questioning everything. But, you know, whatever. And came back and fired off Anderson, who has pushed some of his forces forward and took out one of the guns here. The other one is sitting right there, shaken. as I'm finishing off the stuff that was technically under Robinson. I don't know how to, declare it because it's like not with Robinson anymore, but I know that it's his stuff. That kind of means that maybe I don't really need to push McLaws in that direction. I feel like I've cleared everything out here. I can spin around and move here against, I guess, Doubleday. If I get an attack, I'm probably... See, the question is, which attack do I want to burn? Do I want to burn Heath's attack down here, where he's getting kind of beaten up, and I probably shouldn't... He got kind of beaten up on the defensive actions, but he wasn't in great shape before them, actually. If I get to burn, or do I want to burn McLaws? Now, I've got one more that I'm assured to get, and then I'll go to rolling dice to see, simply because I screwed up with the cups and whatnot. So yeah, I gotta make a choice of whether I want to guarantee an engagement. Chances are, slightly less than 50-50 that I'll get both. So yeah, it's McLaws is the more important thing to get, but also I might not want to wear him out. He's got a ways to march that could cause some issues, and I think either way he goes, he'll be able to kind of cut Doubleday off. So I think I'll go with Heath first, because I don't see anything particularly good happening. Although I would pull back with Heath. I would pull back with both of them if I could. I don't feel comfortable with the attack orders in either case. I don't like attacking. A lot of the information in the game is I'm starting to position Heath for his attacks. I'm not sure I'm on the finalized decision here. I think I am in terms of maneuver, but now I have to figure out where the artillery can actually fire, because there's woods here, but I don't think there is here, and it's kind of hard to see. I'm finding, again, this map, the counters, whatever, it's just much harder to see the terrain than it is on something like TSS, and even something as simple as woods. Maybe it's because there's more woods on the board, I'm not sure, or that it's just drawn in such a way that sometimes the counters are positioned so it's kind of hard to see, and there's so much busy terrain everywhere. Everything's just busy. But one of the other things that I hadn't mentioned before, I think, that I'm finding is problematic, is assessing the viability of a unit. So in TSS, look, if you've got forces that are beaten up, there's not much you can do about it. You can either attack with them or hold them back and, figure, well, they're not going to do much anyway. But you find that out pretty quickly. In this, it's more important to know the quality of the forces you're hitting with. So Heath, I may well, if I chase Buford off, I may well want to drop him into an R&R because I have that option. However, I'm finding it harder, in part because of these numerical markers, in part because there's a flipped side of counters and the numerical markers, and there's so much stacking and everything else. I'm finding it harder to be able to determine, do I need to R&R with this unit, with this division? Does it need to stop, or can I continue going if Buford, assuming I can get him off the damn hill. I also can't tell whose is what because of the color mixture and usage. So I see some orange sticking out. Well, that could be brown or tan or something like that. And it's just, but that's a peculiarity of the Cav, having that yellowish color up there. I would obviously be able to tell here with the blue and pink, for the most part. But then we go over here and we got some blues mixed in. I'm having trouble telling sometimes whether Pender's forces, and the same here, whether Pender's forces are actually, Union troops. I getting that confusion, you know? And the reds, well, there are reds over here, so they could be part of first core. And I'm just like, the things that are poking out. Now, part of that is just, look, there's only so much color palette, and there are so many different divisions and whatnot. But again, I'm finding it harder to keep track of what the fuck is going on in so many ways. In a way that the much simpler palette used in TSS, I don't think really bothered me. Every now and then I would have somebody trailing along with the wrong division or something, but you know what? Shit like that happened. Not usually by accident, but the game rules don't usually allow it, and then, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, gosh, what's Davis doing here? You know? You're just like, oh, well, I guess he got attached. Now that I noticed, I guess he's being detached. And maybe it just bothers me less in that game or whatever, but it feels like there's a lot more, I don't know. Anyway, more gripes, that's all. Trying to push my way through this turn just to get to the ultimate misery of rolling the morale checks for all the shaken units. And there are a lot of them, and you have to hunt through all the stacks. You can't count on, hey, there's a shaken unit on top, that's the unit that has it. Although conceivably I could order my units to have shaken units on top. I like to keep my artillery on top, which means that there's issues with that as well. So yeah, I mean, anywhere where there's a fairly large size stack of units, I have to sort through every single one of those stacks when it comes to the time to clean up. And that has nothing to do with the die rolls. The ones that have shaken markers probably have to make a die roll. Probably? Fuck. No, I don't remember. Yeah, to recover from shaken, they need to make a die roll. To recover cohesion hits, they don't if they have ammo near them. And chuck wagons and all the other stuff that bring the troops back. Yeah. Boy, you know, Anderson, it was just a couple of units to attack, but here I'm like, oh, fuck, I gotta attack 3 different units, and there's complex terrain, and there's all kind of shit going on, and my charts are over here instead of the ones over there, which is going to be harder to cope with, but otherwise, you know, whatever. And I think we're done with that one. Not very effective. We didn't get too bad a result here, but over on this side, but throughout the rest, really not too good at all. Here especially, we lost our first Confederate unit. Well, not Pettigrew. Can't be Pettigrew. He's not there, is he? Davis. One of Davis's units. One hint that I have as to how a division's doing, though, is I can look at its fatigue levels. And I mean, I look at Heath and I'm like, yeah, you know, at the very least I want to recover the fatigue. But I've also, the reason I've gotten all these hits is not from contiguous attacks. It's damage. And I probably need to pull back. It's hard to retreat. You end up causing problems to units behind you, unless they're part of the same brigade. I think that includes artillery. If you run through artillery, it fucks it up. Otherwise, I would have fallen back. Don't want to look it up. Might be wrong. Don't care. But yeah, it's getting pretty bloody over here. And honestly, you know, I say, wow, First Corps is really beaten up. Beaufort's taken some hits as well. Although you can see he's not in that bad a shape. He's held up pretty well. In fact, as remarkably well as he does in some other games. Where he just kind of cooks the goose with those carbines, etc. If you're thinking TSS. He's got like plus weaponry in CWB series as well, which means he gets an extra shift or something on the fire table, which is pretty good as well. So no matter what, these tend to be pretty potent. They're really deadly in TSS though. But they want to get out because losing Cav is particularly painful to the army morale. And that leaves me with what? One left, and I got to roll for him, the McLaws. Well, let's see. Let's see who wins the initiative. The Union do. That means McLaws gets burnt into the cup. He could get burnt again. He does not. So I get to use him, but I don't have directed, I don't have attack, I don't have anything, so I can't actually engage with McLaws, but I can kind of position a little bit. Now, after a little bit of a shift to this position, trying to stay outside of zones of influence so that I can recover without having to roll, if I recall correctly. Again, like, there's just so many little... I mean, I don't know. I've just gotten so spoiled by CWB when it comes down to it with it. But anyway, having pushed my way forward, so there's some danger. I might be in range of these guns. I don't remember what their range is, but I think the shaken guys are okay. I think they're far enough away. I don't think there are any guns under there, but I don't know. I have to paw through those to see, is there some artillery there? Like, it's always so fucking clear in the games I'm more used to. The lines are well defined and everything. You don't see this kind of muddled mess as a regular occurrence, and it feels like here with all these, multi-hex withdrawals and advances coming in and everything. Mainly, maybe it's simply because in those other games I don't melee very often. I don't do that all-out attack unless, because honestly the systems don't really favor that kind of attack. But here, you don't have an option, right? If you want to fight with infantry, you're rolling on a certain table. And you don't have much control over how violent the action is. So, like, if I do see a melee overrun, that sometimes will happen someplace like Cemetery Hill or whatever, yeah, it gets confusing and it gets messy over a few hexes on the entire battlefield. But here, it feels like I've got messes anywhere where I come into contact and actually start fighting because of the retreating and all that happens much more frequently. Now, again, it's not 20-minute turns, it's 1-hour turns, but it kind of feels like units get pushed around a little more than they should. I don't know. I mean, again, it's an hour. It's an hour. It's not, it's not those 20-minute turns. Like, if I think about, hey, over the course of 3 turns, can I push somebody, significantly? Yeah, but they kind of maintain a linear formation that this game does not have. I've got people getting cut off and unable to move and unable to do a damn thing in the kind of positions that, like, it very rarely happens that way. Now, again, maybe it's the peculiarities of the outflanking and whatnot that I'm doing, that if this kind of situation developed in CWB or in TSS, I would see a very messy condition, but I don't think so. I think the only reason it's happening is because, in a way, the attacks are being pressed more violently than I would in those games. Because, again, those games don't really favor a heavy melee attack. There are some conditions where it's very important, and some conditions where there's maybe a gamey reason to do it. But anyway, so like I said, now I'm at the position I thought I was in at the beginning of the day, when I thought I could finish this up. Now I don't know if I'm going to finish the fucking turn, because I've got everything that I thought I had to do, all these operational, all these movement orders, and then I've got the tedious task of handling all the shaken units, the couple of broken units. There really aren't many. I know of one. I can see it right there. I don't think there's any others, but there might be. I think I'm done with the movement. You see some Confederate cav or units moving on the map. Merritt's kind of scared. He knows what's coming. He's pulling away. There's not much point to him trying to engage them, because there are no rules about, trying to prevent the Confederates from creating a supply line back this way. Nothing of that nature. And obviously, for the course of the battle, the days of the battle, you don't have to maintain that line. But to continue the campaign, you would need to. So some kind of line, has to be maintained. Now, with no battlefield on these other major roads going south, let's fight here where there's an actual battlefield. Yeah, let's fight where we have the map. It's really a shame. I wish this was larger and detailed, or had additional battle maps available to cover areas that would kind of correspond better. I don't know. But the terrain on the operational map is very abstracted. Mountains do not form like this and such not. So it's very clear that there's something weird going on, especially when you're outside this dotted line. But it may be even within it gets perverted. So it's hard to tell. You couldn't just say, oh, well, just square it off and triple the size of the map. I don't know that would work. But a much, much larger field of play would be more interesting and allow you to explore, hey, what if the Confederates could shift their army over in this direction, not worry about Harrisburg? But what they really want to do is they want to win the battle, right? Wherever the battle is. And it kind of doesn't matter where the battle is. Gettysburg is a fine place to hold this battle. It's just, if you want to play it at any level of detail and not have the enemy just withdraw from you and whatnot without much penalty, you kind of have to do it on the tactical map. There's not much you can do there. Yeah, I'm delaying the game again. I have absolutely no desire to do the stuff involved in the end of game turn. But I may put some of these new units on the board. We've got 11th Corps showing up there. Over here, we got Imboden, but he's not on the map yet. He's really kind of protecting his supply wagon there more than anything else, which I don't know if I want to bring on the board, but I can probably I don't know. I wasn't able to defend the Union artillery supply. The Union has no reserve supply now. I've just, the Union is so completely hosed that I kind of don't mind letting the game die because of that. But on the other hand, outside of the supply wagons, I'm not sure how much worse than the historical Union first day I'm really doing. 1st Corps and 11th Corps, they got hammered. And all I'm seeing here is 1st Corps and 3rd Corps are hammered. So it's approximately the same kind of thing. In fact, 3rd Corps is smaller than 11th. And the forces that are coming up, because I want to discuss things, but I don't want to make it to the end. 5th Corps, now they got a problem because I'm deploying 5th Corps over here. 12th Corps was intending to go take the ground between Seminary and Gettysburg and help First Corps extricate itself. Maybe help Buford get out of there. 11th Corps, now this is where it's weird. Like 5th Corps is coming up here. 11th Corps is here and here, with Howard back here. And they're gathering to get on the extreme left over here and help Buford out. I mean, it's possible that I might find a defensive place along these ridges. See, the problem is the ridges here are facing opposing ridges that are better. That are more extensive, and I think that's why you give up the Seminary Ridge line. And this game probably expresses it better than most of the games that I've played. Well, I mean, I'm thinking really Thunder here and TSS as the two major ones. Yes, I played Last Chance for Victory, but I don't remember it that much. I haven't played it that many times. And I remember some really weird shit happening in it. with the Confederates getting cut off from their supply source and that being really problematic and having to try to fight their way out or whatever. But the terrain leading up to Seminary Ridge is not all that good for defense, whereas there's a nice big gap here getting to Cemetery Hill where the artillery can command the position. But this is kind of messy, you know? But yeah, I think Cemetery Hill just happens to be the best place to defend. The only question is, do I want to form that big line that they historically formed? Or, you know, how much do I want to push forward from that? It's Third Corps has to get out of there, right? They're not in a good position, and Fifth Corps is going to support that. We've got Sixth Corps going up to Cemetery Hill. I think they're going to start digging in, essentially, because I'm looking at that as my primary defense. Everyone else is committed to helping someone get out of the way. So Second Corps is committed to helping block Stuart. Fifth Corps is committed to trying to help Third Corps get out of the way. 12th Corps is committed to helping First Corps get out of the way. 11th Corps is helping Buford and maybe First Corps get out of the way. We do have some problems in terms of somebody could get in somebody else's way, which, you know, that happens. Oh, and over here, 11th Corps, I had to stop behind this hill because there's some, not this, there's some artillery here, which could kind of see me if I pop up over that. And I can't be doing movement orders within like 5 hexes, because that's the zone of influence of the artillery, having looked these things up. So yeah, what do I have to remain? Well, there's nothing that's getting recover cohesion, but there are things that are getting the morale adjustments in terms of all these shaken units. Some of them get to roll, some of them don't have to. They just recover. And then the points get degraded. And, you know, stuff that got itself out of a zone of influence is, I think, is able to just recover for free. I should check that. And I'm trying to keep units outside of zones of influence as much as possible to reduce the amount of die rolls I have to make. But I just can't face it right now. So another day. I mean, I'm thinking about, wow, it's taking me like more than 2 days to do an hour of the game. Now, if I think of that as to do a turn, that feels ridiculous. But if I think of it as an hour of the day, and then I think about, well, if I committed the same kind of time to, say, TSS, to one of the regimentals, CWB is a little faster, or line of battle, I wouldn't be shocked if I only got like 1 turn in a day, which Those turns are only 20 minutes each. So I'm kind of keeping the same pace. It's not a great pace. I feel like I'm spending more time playing and definitely more effort in dealing with this than I would with the other games. But in terms of like, hey, how long will it take me to get through 3 days of Gettysburg or whatever? Well, I'm not sure it's that different when I measure it in days. When I measure it in actual hours played, I think this is costing me a little bit more. I feel like I'm playing more, I don't know. I feel like I'm expending more effort and feeling more burned out after, each little periodic playing. For whatever that matters. It's like, yeah, maybe the time works out about similar, but the things I'm actually having to do are just more emotionally draining. I got online for about 10 minutes or so, and boom, the internet's down. And this is annoying. It never used to happen. Like, my modem going crazy, whatever. It never used to happen here. And then they did some stupid work. I'd have like a couple outages a year. And it's been a couple weeks since the last one, but it's just, they're so fucking common ever since they did that work at the beginning of the year, a little before the beginning of the year. And it's fucking pissing me off. And it often happens, so like, it usually happens about this time. Sometime, between like midnight and 4 a.m. or whatever. And, most people aren't affected by it, I'm sure. But it's like, for me, this is a time when I tend to be awake and online a fair amount. I'm always online if I'm awake, pretty much. But yeah, I don't know what's going on, but these have been like, ever since they upgraded. They upgraded, I think, to the 5G network for, for the cell phone stuff. And they did something and just weird shit and just regular outages. And at really inconvenient times for me. One thing that's not clear, the recovery. All units, it appears, do it kind of simultaneously. I don't know what the hell's going on, but they have an opportunity to retreat before they do it. They still have to make a morale check if they retreat out of a zone of influence or whatever, but they get a penalty if they're still within the zone of influence. Now, it's a little weird because they get a -2 penalty no matter what if they're in a zone of control or influence, but like under the normal rules, you get a -1, -2. Sorry, -2 for zone of control, -1 for zone of influence. So it's like a little different, but whatever. And the units continue to deteriorate, which I kind of like, but it may be a little too severe. Like, units that failed their morale check because they're already weakened are just going to kind of disintegrate if they stay anywhere near contact with the enemy. Whereas something like this recovers just fine because it doesn't have to make a morale check at all because I'm outside of the zone. So I've done this little cluster. It took, a few minutes to cover all the units. And now I work my way through. It's a fucking expensive process. During the whole process, it's like all this room for fumbling counters and everything because you're pulling through all these different stacks. Things are crowded and everything. Looking for, hey, is there a shaken marker under here or whatever. I've gotten this. I took care of Stuart's. We got some mess that happened, and I don't know which way this was facing. I think Robertson was in good shape, so I think that just got flipped somehow, but I can't be sure. And again, so like, you make things mechanically painful and complicated, and these little trivial pieces of information that the game's trying to capture and maybe doing a great job of, well, maybe this unit should be flipped over. Maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. You're just trying to keep track of too much, too much complexity within everything. Anyway, I don't know if I'm at the end yet because I see red stuff here. But as I find another damaged piece that could automatically recover. Another thing that you see that feels really, really definitely unreasonable, because it's hard to tell, you know, stragglers, how do you account for stragglers? When do they happen and everything? Ooh, I think my internet's back. Well, you account for them in other games by other mechanisms. So in CWB, the only time stragglers happen is when you force march or you end up taking combat results. Stragglers just happen from that. And they accrue throughout each time you're fired upon or melee or whatever, to whatever degree. Which makes it fairly easy. Here, you've got this mishmash, whatever cohesion hits are, right? They're a very abstract concept. They work, you know, they work fine in some games. I like them in GBOH. But in GBOH, well, yeah, you can recover them. You know? But here, it's not clear, you know, just like in GBOH, it's not clear how many, you know, how many of those were hard casualties, how many are stragglers, whatever. So it kind of is okay that men are just straggling off as a retreat's happening. But what doesn't feel at all realistic to me is how much the lines just disintegrate. Okay? Not through any pressure, not through any direct pressure of a combat result. Now, you could again do some hand wavy stuff. Hey, the enemy's there or whatever. And I don't know. It depends. It depends on the range you're talking about. Well, no, that doesn't look good. It looked like I had it for a moment there, but now it's all flashy and seems to be lost again. And it had just come back. I think it's working to reestablish again. I don't know what the hell it's doing. But anyhow, the way the lines are collapsing and units are getting left behind in little clumps and everything, it's one thing when it happens through combat, but when the line is just dissolving in and of itself through being somewhere near the enemy, or having had been near the enemy, retreated a couple of hexes, and then has to retreat again after it's left, you know, after it's already fallen back, it just keeps retreating. Although those I kind of don't mind. What I do mind, though, is this kind of just, I can't pull these other guys out. They don't have an option to retreat at this point. So what's going to happen is they're getting exposed, and then if the command chip pull system, whatever, generates things badly for me, well, this is all going to be pocketed and destroyed the same way Robinson's division basically was. So, like, it's feeling like whole divisions are kind of vaporizing pretty much a little too easily. I don't know. Again, that doesn't mean everybody's gone from it, because the units do get to be restored. Anyway, I think I've gotten all of those done, which means that I am at the stuff I can handle. And then we'll load this up as soon as I have internet again. Changing the weather, it's still on the warm side of, oh no, it's still in hazy. Wow. Whatever that means. That may actually have affected the artillery sighting ranges. And yeah, no. It did its reestablishment again, and now it's flashing again like it can't find shit. And I don't know what the fuck. All right. Well, that is it for right now. It wasn't as painful as it was last time, because I've kind of gotten into the idea of, look, if your units are shaken, they can't hold the line. They can't be in the line anymore. And that means if you have weaker units, weaker morale units, whatever, they attack and then they run away. And if they're on the line trying to defend, they run away. And unless it's really, really vital that you hold a position, and And then when you get your morale checks, run away for your morale checks as well. So we've got a lot more bouncing back and forth than you get even with the rubber routes of say, the TSS system or even CWB. But TSS is probably more impacted by it. But I feel like proper play of this because honestly, you have enough movement points to do quite a bit, as long as you're not, in defend orders, and as long as you don't roll the half movement. 8 movement points is a fair amount, given that you can move an extra hex if you have any movement points at all. So you can set things up so that your last hex is jumping up the cliff or whatever it is. But yeah, so I feel like the units flow forward, they hit the enemy line, and they fall back. And they fall back hard. Like, what are the hexes? 200 yards? 100 yards? Nope. No. 200 yards, yeah. So if you're looking at falling back 2 or 3 hexes, you're looking at a 600-yard, and obviously there's time to make that withdrawal or whatever. It's just, I'm getting this feeling of attacks coming in wave after wave after wave. In a way, I don't know. Maybe it's not that unreasonable, especially if you're using supporting units, if you're cycling new units in and whatever. It might not be that terrible, but it is definitely more painful. And again, I get kind of the feeling that it's not quite getting everything right. And I don't, clearly I don't think that whatever it's getting right that's adding to the story is actually all that valuable, is worth all the extra effort of the game. But in some ways, it might be getting a little bit more of the story. It's just, you can't see it, through all the stack squirts and die rolls and everything else that's going on. All right. Well, I can't load it up, but we will when we can. Seems like I'm up and running again, which means I can load this up. I should have actually started my processing on it before this. It's actually a big deal because I've already missed, I think, by an hour or so, the time when I'm supposed to be on to grab quests for my clan, which is always kind of there are some really easy ones. Anyway, I did leave something important out. Am I quitting or not? Jeez. I feel like I can't. I feel like I can't. I may be taking a break, though, to play another 18XX. I don't know yet. But I may also just mark this as, hey, I ended up quitting. Sorry, later on. I really don't know right now. But as of right now, there's enough interesting going on, and the recovery was not that painful. So I'm like, okay.